Hey y'all, it's me, Dree. So before I start this next chapter of my story, I want to say that viewer discretion is advised. In this video, I'll be sharing sensitive material from my past. It includes emotional abuse, manipulation, grooming, self-harm, and trauma responses. My intention isn't to glorify the pain, but it's to honor the truth of what I lived through, and also to show how I began to move from surviving into remembering who I really was. Looking back now, I used to think that it was the trauma from my first marriage that pulled me away from God, love, and even at times, my own children. But I can see now that it was also the medication I was taking. Because the medicine, it created a fog of detachment. There were withdrawal symptoms if I had missed a dose. And it stripped away my ability to feel that everyday kind of love. And that state of numb survival that I was in, it was slowly becoming my new normal. It was in that space, disconnected from myself, but determined to keep moving forward, that the next chapter of my story began. This is where I met the man who would become my second husband. When he showed up in my life, he came in fast and strong. He knew exactly what to say, exactly how to make me feel like I was chosen. Because after everything I had been through, it felt like he was rescuing me. It felt like somebody finally was seeing me for who I was, and that they wanted me, and that I had been picked. He showered me with attention, and for the first time in a really, really long time, I didn't feel like I was invisible anymore. Things between us progressed quickly. He moved into my apartment in just 3 weeks. And before very long, I found my kids telling him that they loved him. This came before he really ever even said those words to me. He was bonding with my children, and especially with my youngest daughter, asking to keep her home on his free days so that they could spend time together, so that they could bond and connect. On the surface, his image was clean. He didn't have a criminal record, and he looked like the opposite of everything that my first husband had been. But he also was unemployed. Because he was younger than I was, I told myself that he was just lacking a real opportunity, and maybe for someone to take a real chance on him. And surely, I thought, with my business skills and the survival mode I was able to thrive in, I knew we would be able to get him employed in no time. And so I made some calls, and I set him up with an old high school friend who gave him a shot at his tow trucking company. He was doing a great job, and he was expressing a real passion for driving trucks. So before too long, I decided to enroll and pay for him to be fully trained and to obtain his Class A driving license. He had swept me off my feet with promises of forever, with big dreams and big gestures. And I was so eager to believe in the picture he painted that I didn't even stop to question whether or not we were building on something solid. Because at that time, I didn't want to question it. I just wanted to feel wanted, and I wanted to believe in the fairy tale that he was telling me. So things were going great until the day of our first big fight. That day was a Saturday morning. He had gone out of bed before me to check on the girls. They were playing in my dining room with their dolls and their strollers, doing what 5-year-olds and 3-year-olds do. And it wasn't too long before I woke up fully and decided to get out of bed to join my family. But when I turned the corner to go into the kitchen, I saw the last thing I ever expected to see. He was standing at my kitchen sink, lost in his own world. He had his phone in his hand, and he was watching a pornography, and he was pleasuring himself. And right there on the other side of the counter, I saw my girls. And immediately, everything went red. I went into a rage that even my medicine couldn't absorb. I was screaming as loud as I could. And the truth of what I just saw, it was echoing through my apartment building. In noticing how quickly things were escalating, and because I was being so loud, he quickly said he should go. He packed his things into a trash bag and left. When he walked out, rage filled my body. I was shaking with it, desperate for him to feel the sting of the hurt he had just caused me. But almost immediately, that rage, it collapsed into despair. Because it was the moment I realized that he had taken all of his things and that he left and certainly wasn't coming back. That the abandonment, it came crashing down all over again. The fire in me burned out in seconds, and what was left was only feelings of emptiness. I couldn't hold them. And I turned my storm inward. I needed to quiet my emotions. And there was only one way that I had learned to do that when I was a little girl. I wasn't feeling seen, I wasn't feeling heard, and I wasn't feeling validated about what had just transpired in my home. And I was also melting down over the feelings of rejection. It was in the middle of that emotional meltdown that I saw my 2 babies. They were watching me come undone. And it became clear to me in that moment that I had to get myself under control. So what I did is I resorted in that coping skill that I had learned as a small child and hadn't used since my teenage years. Because it was the only way to shut my feelings down. I went out to the shed in my backyard. I found some box cutters. And I dealt with my pain through self-harm. After doing so, I came back inside. I packed up my girls And all I could think was to get them out of that environment and away from that scene and into fresh air. So we went to the park down the street. While we were at the park and while they were playing, my boyfriend FaceTimed me. He was trying to rationalize what had happened, and I wasn't listening. It was during that call that he noticed the blood on my arm, the blood on my arm. And before I could even process what was happening, he took a screenshot of it. When our phone call ended, he immediately called my parents and sent them the picture, framing the day as him having a grave concern for my well-being, pleading with them to get me help immediately. There was no mention of what had actually happened in our home that morning, just hours before. There was no mention of what I had walked in on. In that moment, I wasn't the woman who had just protected herself and her children. He turned me into the villain and the danger in my own home. So when I came home from the park with my kids, I was met at my front door by the police and by my parents. They were all there waiting for me. My parents were there to take my kids, and the police were there and instantly put me in handcuffs. This all happened right on my front porch, right in front of my neighbors, and even worse, right in front of my babies. And in that instant, my parents went from being one of my very few safe places to becoming my biggest enemy. Because instead of protecting me, they were standing by him. I was put in the back of a police car and I was taken away. Not to comfort, not to care, but to a state-funded mental institution where I was placed on a 5150 hold. During the time I was locked away, my boyfriend swooped in and played the part of the hero. He was driving the long distance every single day to visit me in that hospital. He was bringing me clean clothes, handfuls of quarters to make phone calls, and he was pouring into me all the emotional support that at the time I felt I needed. During that stay, we would talk, and he was swearing off ever watching pornography again. He was promising that he would go so far to not ever pleasure himself again. And he was swearing that my kid's presence in that awful scene had not been anywhere close to intentional. He was saying all the right things. And because of the state of mind that I was in, I wanted to believe him. And so that's what I chose to do. While I was being stripped of my freedom and my dignity, he was building an image. And by the time I came home, the story was no longer about what I had walked in on that morning, but it was about me being unstable and him being the one who held everything together. He had somehow turned my collapse into his crown. I was in that hospital for 7 days, and when I came home, things on the surface looked like they were getting back to normal. It didn't take long before I started to pick up on just the slightest shift. Something subtle at first. It was between him and my oldest, my disabled daughter. Sometimes it was just a slight look. Other times it was a shift in his tone, or the occasional sharp word he would blurt out to her. My daughter wasn't expressing anything that I wasn't already seeing, and because I was always so quick to correct him when he would spout off at her, I told myself that it was just some misplaced aggression. And it was something I believed I could work out with him through my attention and with my guidance. You see, I couldn't name it just yet, but my intuition, it was starting to stir. And something in me knew the dynamic wasn't quite right. I just wasn't ready to fully face it at the time. Looking back, I can see how quickly the ground shifted beneath me during that time. From feeling rescued to being trapped in a story that wasn't mine. At the time, I was buried in a fast-paced work life that kept me mostly distracted. The drugs I was taking were dulling my edges. They were keeping me detached and from the very reality that was folding in front of my eyes. Every day there was love bombing from him, constant attention, words of affirmation, and grand promises. His bond with my youngest child was growing stronger, and it felt like a picture of the family that I wanted to believe in and wanted so much to be mine. Then he went over the road as a long-haul truck driver. And for the next 3 months, I carried a long-distance relationship with him. The focus during that stretch was almost entirely on him and I. And our relationship became the center of my gravity. In that haze, all the red flags, they were blurring together. What I thought was love was already showing its cracks, but I couldn't see them clearly. My intuition, it was whispering, even back then, but I just wasn't ready to listen. If you've stayed with me through this part of my story, then I want to say thank you. These aren't easy truths for me to share, but I do believe that they matter. Because maybe you've felt the pull of wanting to be loved so badly that you're missing the cracks forming underneath your feet also. For me, those first little cracks, they only widened with time. And what started as subtle shifts soon became full-blown fractures. And in the middle of all of it, I managed to lose myself completely. And that's where I'm going to take you in the next chapter. I'm going to take you deeper into how the illusion unraveled and what it cost me before I was ever able to find my way back. So until then, I just want you to remember, where there is love, there is light. And I'll talk to you guys again soon.